Hey there, art fans. I got an unboxing for you today, which is really a little kind of dull, being that it's mostly paint. But I got some other stuff thrown in just to show you how I'm bringing back gouache. I haven't painted in gouache in a long time. But the first two things I got that weren't gouache were a couple of Copic Marker things. A Copic Marker refill. What is this? B21 Baby Blue. This is because my B21, that the cap is getting loose on, which means it's just about done. Even though you can refill them, once the cap seal doesn't work anymore, it's over. And yellowish green YG06, this is refill ink. Got some of that because I was running out. And the new smaller size refill ink at the same price. And then I got a whole bunch of gouache, and I went and got the... because I used to paint in gouache in the 90s, all into the 2000s. I kind of stopped in the early 2000s probably, and I wanted to kind of get back into it and use some gouache. So I still have a lot of gouache, but it's not very good gouache anymore. It's matter of fact, I still have a bunch of it. I just tried reviving it. I'd keep it in these little things because gouache is a watercolor paint, and you can add more water to it and revive it, but after 20 years, it gets little chunks in it. So it wasn't as smooth as it should be. So, and this ends up being, I think I got, this is a starter kit, which is 10. And Winsor Newton is some of the best gouache you can get. You can use it out of the tubes, sort of as an opaque, thick paint, or you can water it down and use it as a watercolor. And this is, this is 10 tubes, and I got 12 individual tubes, which... plus the two markers ended up being about $150 worth of gouache. So those, I guess, would be about $135 worth of gouache minus those two markers. But as you can see here, what do we have here? Primary yellow, permanent yellow, deep spectrum red, primary blue, ultramarine, permanent green, yellow ochre, black and white. You know, I hardly ever use black gouache. I use ink with it. It's just easier than trying to paint. That's the kit I got. And then I got a whole. Let's see. Lemon yellow. Like, these are all just the same tubes, and these tubes all go around $7. Some of them are more expensive, like permanent green light. Where's that orange? Orange Lake Light, that's a good one. There's a cadmium-free orange here. Cadmium-free orange. This one is $14. So depending on the pigment that's in them, they get more expensive. Permanent green deep to go with the permanent green light. What is this? Flame red. I basically got 3 of each color, like 3 varieties. Like, there was no purple in there, so I think I had to get 3. Brilliant violet, Windsor violet. Let's see if I can show the colors there. I think I got 1 more violet in here. Brilliant purple. So it's like I had to buy 3 purples just because there's no purple in that basic kit. Intense blue. Orange Lake Deep. And Prussian blue. Prussian blue is a really dark blue, almost black. Very handy. One of my favorite blues for adding depth to things. Now, along with all this gouache, I also got I got this separately. Graphite color watercolors, and I much prefer, like, the difference between gouache and watercolor, they're really the same thing, except gouache has an opaque white in it, kind of. So with watercolor, you usually use thin and layer to get some depth to it, but watercolor is always transparent. Gouache can be transparent or opaque, and you can use them together. They're used a little like watercolor is used with more water. You use washes with it, much more water. Gouache, not necessarily. You kind of use it like thick, like paint sometimes. But I just want to. This was about $15. I saw it on Amazon. I wanted to try it. You can see that there's just slightly different colors of gray almost. I guess they call them graphite colors. I don't know why. I've never tried these before. But we'll try them out. No, not the funny thing is, I showed you, like I said, mostly through the 2000s, I switched over to these I'd put gouache in here, cover it up, and then when I wanted to come back to it, I add more water, stir it up, and get it back to the right consistency. But then they sat for a decade. And I just this summer tried to revive them all. I put all water in, and most of them did okay, but a lot of them like have chunks in them. So I go to paint, and there's just chunks of little. It's almost, you can feel it. Like you can read the paint like braille. That's how kind of big the chunks are. So that's why I was like, you know what? I just want all new gouache, especially since over the years I bought a lot of cheap gouache sets, which are okay. They're just not as nice as the Winsor Newton ones. Matter of fact, I still have some of the cheap gouache sets kicking around. But in these, often you get these plastic little dishes that you can put your gouache in or your watercolor, and add some water to it. These I got in the early 90s. They're ceramic. And I don't know when the last time I used them, but I dug all around to find them, and I found them, and they all had dried paint in them. Every single one of these cups had dried paint in them. Now, usually a dried watercolor or a dried gouache, you add more water to revive it and put out and take out. It's not that hard. But when it's been dried in there for 15 years, it's a lot. So I had these soaking for days. I had them soaking in bleach. I had them soaking in water and soap. I had them soaking in everything, and they're pretty well cleaned out. But as you can see, there's still stains in there. You can still see remnants of color, but that doesn't. I'll be okay with it. So I'm going to squeeze a little bit of the gouache into here, add some water if I need to. But I'm going to go back to these palettes and see if I can see if I get into that or not. And the other thing I had to get, well, I didn't actually have to get. I was thinking about getting paper. This is from 6/26/95. This is when I was first learning to use gouache. And this is a 300-pound watercolor paper. It is just my absolute favorite watercolor paper. And I was going to buy some, but then I remembered I still had some sheets of it. Here's a sheet of it. It's a 20 by 30 inch sheet of Arches. This looks like a hot press watercolor paper. There's usually let's see if we can find the watermark. There's the watermark in this corner. See, I don't know if it'll come up on camera, but if you look on the corner there, there it is. You can see Arches Aquarelle. Really good, thick paper. Doesn't buckle, doesn't bend under the weight of the water. And this paper used to be, when I first started getting it in the 90s, it was about $12 a sheet. I think it was around $15 a sheet the last time I bought this, which was like 20 years ago. It's $30 for a sheet of this paper now. I was looking to get some more. Luckily, I still have 5 sheets, so I may as well use them. But $30 for a sheet of this same paper now. I was like, wow, there's some inflation for you. But I also have, I think I showed these in previous art hauls. These are ones I like, and other art hauls I just kind of added on because I wanted to try out some new paper. Trial pack of watercolor boards, and I haven't even tried any of this. Who makes this? Crescent paper. There's just a sample pack. I would throw these in for like $5 or something. Legion paper, Stonehenge colors. What is it? Oh, this is the one I buy all the time. This is a 5x7 watercolor paper. This is 5x7. This is synthetic paper. This is a plastic paper. I've never really used it before. I bought some as samples before. But we'll try it out now. It's plastic paper. How weird. And this is mixed media pad. Once again, 6x8. I don't even remember where I got this year. Just throw it in. I'm like, oh, because when I'm looking for stuff, sometimes I'm like, let's see what they. Sometimes like I got this from Jerry's Artorama. Sometimes I'm like, let's see what they have on sale. Let's see what they have in the clear. Sometimes they have a. Well, that's weird. My Siri speaker just talked to me. I don't know what that was, but so I got a bunch of paper lined up. What Well, oh, here I also dug out over the. Here's the last time I think I had this set up for one of the last times I did gouache, and I just never painted it. So there we have that in blue line. I've got a bunch of these that I actually used these as backgrounds. Oop, I have them in an envelope here. This is various watercolor papers that I used watercolor on to make digital backgrounds of. And I was always going to paint on them one day too, but I never quite did. So I got these ready to go. This is about well, that's a 90-pound paper, I can feel. The other ones are about 140-pound paper. They're 140-pound paper is not bad for watercoloring on. You'll get a bit of a buckle on it. This is 140, but you can tell the poundage is how thick it is. 90-pound I find a little thin. Which is probably why I never use this. That feels like 90 pounds. That's 140 pound right there. But I want to paint something on these. Maybe I'll use my color inks with them too. Up there, there's another one. One of the last times I was trying to paint on this, and I just kind of went, I was just tired of using gouache. I think I switched over to marker around this time is what I did, because marker is kind of instant color. Gouache takes more patience. So I'm going to test my patience and see what I can do. Oh, I also have, hold on, let me show you this. Give me 1 second. I did this summer. I'm always buying little sketchbooks too. Is one with the Strathmore watercolor sketchbook. This is one of the ones I threw in there. But it was this one right here that I had for years and years. That I think it was this summer I went in and I stained all the background colors on it. So now I might take some gouache and paint in this particular sketchbook. But the whole thing took me a day to do this too. It took me a day to set it. I think this was just my inks I was using. And I just was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. This sketchbook has been sitting around for a decade. I haven't gotten around to using it. And I'm like, let me try drawing on a toned ground. So maybe the gouache will go in here too. We'll have to see. Well, there you go. It was really mostly just a bunch of gouache for me, the starter kit and all the tubes, but I dug out all this other stuff to go with it. There you go. Gouache, paper, I'm ready to go. You guys have a good week out there.